And if you succeed in doing it, I would.
Okay, recording's in progress. Okay. Let me turn on my audio recorder. Wait a minute. Okay. Are we set to go, Antonio?
Yes,
Okay, let me do my
yes.
intro and we'll go right into it, okay? Here
Okay.
we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Package Tourist, hosted by yours truly, the Package Tourist in a magical mystery tour called Life, Matthew DiBiase. Tonight's guest is novelist and playwright Antonio Casella. Antonio lives in Lathlain in Western Australia. He was born in Italy, but he and his parents emigrated to Australia when he was 15. His first novel Southfalia, was released in 1980. This was followed by The Sensualist in 1991, and his third novel, An Olive Branch for Sante, in 2013. Antonio has written two plays, The Ghost of Rino Tassone and To Catch a Bride, and a large number of short stories for Hills Publishing, the West Australian, Antipodes, and Westerly publications. Tonight, we will pay tribute to Antonio's writing career. Antonio, welcome to the show. It's a great honor and privilege to have you here. And I'd like to start off our interview by asking you, let's start with your novel, Southfalia, which is a work of satire. What motivated you to use satire in your debut work?
Thank you so much, Matthew, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. I much appreciate it. Satire is the kind of form that is very good if you want to let off a lot of steam. And I was a young man at that time with a lot of steam to issue, and also I was quite an angry young man because, for various reasons, I think most young men seem to start off angry and then they sort of settle down. And indeed, I have certainly. So the reason for my anger at that time was that I was a child migrant, or 15-year-old, so a teenage migrant, accompanying my parents to Australia, and he spoke no English. So I had a double uh, challenge there. First of all, people don't, in those days in Australia, there was a mass migration from Italy and from other countries as well. So mass migration, as we know from what's happening today in the world, engenders a lot of bad feelings by the local population. They feel threatened, their jobs and so on and so forth. And that was true as well in the early 60s. This is early 60s now in Australia. So there's a lot of opposition, a lot of antagonism, which I copped when my parents sent me to school, when I went to school here. The other problem, of course, even more important, was that I couldn't speak the language. So that translated into lots of frustration and anger that sort of kept in there. So I then, when I went to school, I was there for about 3 months, I think, maybe even less. I can't remember. But I wasn't doing any good because I was sitting at the back of the classroom. Nobody talked to me because they couldn't speak to me. And so I left school, got a job, and continued my studies at night time. But I did courses that I paid for and that were entirely devoted to learning English, which helped me a lot. And of course, going out to work and sort of, I couldn't do much work. I worked with my brothers for a while, but it also helped me get out of the house.
Mm.
So this went on for a few years, actually, for 2 or 3, 4, 5 years, by which time my English improved a lot, and so much so that I sat an exam to go to university. I wanted to go to university. So this was about maybe more like 5, 6 years after. And so the other part of, can I continue, or am I talking too much here, Matthew?
No, you're doing fine.
Okay. So the other source of anger was an actual event, political event. In 1975 in Australia, the Prime Minister, Gough Whitlam, whom I adored because he was young, fairly young, but idealistic and had all these dreams that he was going to do all these things for Australia. So to a young man, that's manna to his ears. So he was dismissed by the Governor-General, totally, to my mind, illegal. No, it's never been done before in Australia. It never will, I don't think, since then, because, it's an outrageous thing to do. So more anger, this time was more political and ideological anger. And so I then decided to write Southfalia. The reason why it was a satire, it's just circumstances coming together. We were reading, one of the books we were reading was Candide by Voltaire, and that's a satire, and that's about a corrupt society and, all sorts of things going on there. And that, I thought, well, this is my medium, this is what so Southfalia owes not only its title, but also its form, and to some extent, its form of poking, not simply poking, but representing society as a something corrupt, which, of course, this young man coming out of the desert is going to do everything. It would have been like Whitlam, I think, had he not been dismissed. Sorry. Yep.
Continue. Please go on.
So Southfalia is an imaginary land. It got the title was because in Candide, if you've read it, happen to have read it, is set initially, at least, in Westphalia, which is part of Germany. And so Southfalia was the land of the South, i.e. Australia. And it's from a young man's point of view, self-obsessed, cynical, corrupt. And this young man comes into that society, but of course, in the end I don't want to spoil it for anybody who wants to buy the book, but in the end, he is crucified, inverted commas. So at the end of the novel, it's got this very apocalyptic finale to it, where the island just sinks into the sea and the sea reclaims it. So it was my revenge, if you like, on society and on the people that had dismissed Geoff Whitlam.
Okay. Now, also, isn't it true that you sent your readers a message about the environment with Southfalia? Is that true?
Well, environment has always been a major issue for me. It still is, even more so, I think, because of the conditions that we've reduced our planet. And I'm not alone. There are millions in the world who really worry about it. So it certainly was prominent in my mind then. I was what we call here in Australia a lefty, that is left-leaning, agitator, I suppose.
Oh my.
But I'm not. I wasn't an agitator. I just went to, those days we had. It's before your time, I know. So I'm talking. Probably you don't quite understand because I'm talking about the 1970s. I used to go to marches, for the Vietnam, anti-Vietnam War marches and things like that.
Yeah.
So the environment was always a big preoccupation for me. And of course, you put in as a young person starting off as a young writer, you want to solve the world, don't you? I'm being ironic here. And so the environment was going to be destroyed. But actually, in a way, this is actually what's happening, in my view, anyway, with the population. That was a big, as I said, the ending of the story of Southfalia is quite apocalyptic.
Question, now you're in Western Australia. How close are you? Now, don't they call Western Australia like the Gold Coast, like Perth and all that? Are you close to the Gold Coast in Australia?
No, Gold Coast. Sorry, no. The Gold Coast is on the eastern side in Queensland,
My apologies.
No problem. Which is about 5 hours, certainly 4.5 hours plane flight from here.
Okay.
No, we're in the west part of the country. Here in Perth is more like a Mediterranean, perhaps subtropical Mediterranean climate here.
Okay.
So, and of course, you're probably referring to the Gold Coast and the Great Barrier Reef that's been, decimated.
Okay.
Yes, that is true. So, I'm not claiming that the book was prophetic, but I am in a way. I think that some of the things that it preoccupations
Yeah.
have actually come through. They've come true.
Yeah, I know when they started developing the hole in the ozone layer, Australia had to cope with that issue. I mean, school kids had to stock up on sunscreen, kids with sombreros and ponchos
Yeah,
to cover up because you were more exposed to the UVA and UVB rays than we are up in the northern hemisphere here and all that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh no, it's dire here. You really have to cover up with sunscreen.
yeah,
I'm a swimmer myself. I swim, in public pool, and so I really have to. You have to be careful because it's. I don't understand why that is, but anyway, the sun here is very strong
yeah,
and and fierce.
yes. Now, getting back, are all your work, Antonio, are all your works satirical, or do you change moods from work to work?
Um, I was going to say, sorry, before, can I go back just to my last
Uh,
comment about Southfalia? I think, can I do that? No, no, it's all right. Don't worry if it's going to. I'm just going to say that Southfalia was really a cautionary tale. It can be read as a cautionary
yes.
tale. Now, coming back to your this question, do I choose different forms? Yeah, to some extent you do, um, because each subject matter requires a different time. Sometimes, if it's more dramatic, then you do adopt a different tone because you're trying to convey a certain mood and certain feelings about the world and that. But at the same time, yeah, there's always it's always the author, and the voice is always the same. I think authors do have, like singers, I suppose, a voice which doesn't change that much from book to book, really.
Okay. Now, please tell our listeners about your next work, The Sensualist. What is the book about?
Well, the book is about. First of all, I have to say that it had a very long gestation period. It took me about 6 years to write. It's the book that I wanted to write all the
Mm,
time. Again, it's a little bit of a different look at the migrant experience from the migrant's point of view. Usually, and there are many fine books like this where the migrant struggles through all kinds of challenges and is, usually able to survive those and perhaps even get on with his life, sort of thing. But I wanted a look at migration from the point of view of somebody who really copes really well on one surface, on the superficial surface. And the main character that I chose is Nick Amedeo, and he's guy. It's a kind of personality that gets on with life. He doesn't worry about things. He doesn't think about the past. It's not his business. And even though he might have had some bad experiences as a kid, and he's really adapted to the new society and done extremely well. He's wealthy. He married an Anglo woman. But beneath that, what he's done, he's lived a life where he kind of covers or buries the bad experiences of his child and the good experiences of his child, because he was younger than I was when he left Italy. He would have been about 8 or 9. So I wanted to reverse the situation. He employs some people. The main character is Stephen, or the main offsider in his business, and he is a local person, but he can't control Stephen. So that's a reversal of situation. Um, so yeah, it became a big time there. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to finish it because yeah, I was struggling because I was working full time and also raising family and all that sort of thing. But it's, I think it, it's a kind of book that I'm very proud to have written, and the one that got more exposure than the others um, for it. Um, um, so I don't know what else I can say about. Oh, the book has been. I've changed the title, The Sensualist, which was quite apt because he's a very powerful figure, very um, sexy, if you want to put it that way, but and likes women and all of that sort of thing. But his journey takes a different course. That he never goes back to Italy, for instance, but he goes through it as the day progresses. The actual the actual novel takes 24 hours, and in that 24 hours, there's a total transformation of him. And in the second half, he goes back to Italy in his mind, in his memory, and uncovers things that he wasn't aware of. So that's how the novel kind of develops in the end.
Okay. Now, it's interesting. I read somewhere, is it true that this book has been the subject of research studies in Italy? And if so, in what way? Can you please explain? I mean, why is it the subject of research studies? I'm fascinated with this.
Well, yes, as you know, Italy was a land of migration in the old days. A lot of them came to America and certainly Australia as well. And there's a lot of interest in migration kind of literature. So I went for a couple of tours in Italy, 20, 25 years ago to promote the book. And there's quite a bit of interest in universities there. I would say there's about 4 or 5 dissertations have been done by students at the University of Bologna and Catania. And it gave me great pleasure to have that sort of input from them. Um, so yes, there was that interest there in Italy about that particular book, and it's no wonder because even now, I think a lot of Italians go around the world and migrate to other parts of the world, even though they don't need to as much as they used to, because life has got a lot better now. We came after war periods, things were different.
Yeah. I mean, Antonio, I can speak from personal experience. I am the grandson my grandfather and my grandparents came to America. My grandmother came to Philadelphia in 1913, and my grandfather came through Ellis Island in New York and ended up in Philadelphia in 1920. And I'm their grandson there. And also,
Oh,
and one of my father's cousins emigrated from Italy in 1954, and he lived in Venezuela. And
right.
I have second cousins who still live in Venezuela there in
Mm.
54, 1954 and all that. I've never met them, but they're out there, you know? Yeah.
Yes, no, Italians are great migrants. They
Yeah.
really go back a long time,
Yeah.
and the thing is, the attachment to the country is transferred often to the second generation and third generation.
Yeah.
They want to go back. They want to visit the grave of their grandparents and things like
Yeah.
that. I've got my daughter. If I could say this, it's a bit of an aside here. I'll let you know. So we're talking about that. I'm going to Italy on Friday, actually,
Oh,
to
wow.
meet my daughter,
Yeah.
who speaks no Italian, and lives in California. Her husband's American, but she said she's turning. I did not say this, but don't tell her I told you. She's turning 50, and she said, "Dad, for my birthday, I want to go to Italy to celebrate there."
Yeah.
So, that attachment to the old country, it's a bit nostalgic and all that. It's not,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's fine.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that your parents came from Sicily. Now, my grandparents came from Abruzzi. We're mountain people.
Okay, yes. I've been to Abruzzi. I've got a cousin that lives there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she died, but the
Oh,
family's still there. Yeah.
and I still have
Um,
my father's young cousin. His name, I call him my Uncle Dino. He's still there. He just turned 81 about a few weeks ago and all that. He still runs the family farm there, grows olive trees in his backyard.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's my parents. Yeah, yeah. They and we had olive trees. We had everything in our. We had bits of land
yeah,
around which we cultivated,
yeah,
and we basically the main source of food for us, but
yeah,
it was healthy food. We
yeah,
even grew wheat, which we turned into flour and for bread and stuff like that. Yeah, and
yeah,
of course olives and wine and vines for vino and all that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't enough, I don't think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my
Somebody,
my people were I could trace my father's line back to the 17th century. They were always most very humble peasants, contadina.
yeah,
Yeah,
contadini, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk about your novel, An Olive Branch for Sante.
Okay, well, an olive branch for Sante basically is a contrasting much of what we're talking about, the old world and the new world.
Mm,
Um, the old world with its attachments to tradition and just, fearing to change, stuck in a mountain town in Sicily. Um, and then the novel actually starts in Australia.
mm,
Starts in Australia, migrants from Italy, um, and then that's contrasted with suburban Perth, if you like. Uh, a suburban suburb of a big town. People are more forward-looking. They um, they're modern, in other words, but somewhat a little bit dissatisfied with perhaps the materialism that everybody chases and jobs and things like that. Now it turns out, I don't want to say too much here again, but I have to say this. It turns out that um, this young man and this young woman, one was born in Italy because the mother goes back to Italy. She had a bad experience in Australia. She goes back to Italy and gives birth to this young man. Whereas this young woman, she's only about 3 or 4 years older than him, she was born in Australia. It turns out that they've got a common father, sort of half brother and sister. And so when the girl goes back to Italy through some circumstances, I think she's a journalist, she's doing some work there. She meets him but doesn't realize who he is. But the developing relationship, fraternal relationship between these two, the bond, becomes the story.
mm.
And that, of course, enriches them both and widens their aspect. So
And
that's another branch for Sante.
okay. Antonio, how autobiographical are your novels? How much of your own personal life experience do you inject into your characters?
Well, I think the author, I believe that the author is present in his work. Well, he is because he's the one who wrote it. But some of his characteristics, his likes and dislikes, the characters that he chooses, or she, obviously, um, reflect on him and his preoccupations, his dreams, his ideals, if you like, in some cases. Um, so I think there are little chinks of the author interspersed in his work.
Mm,
But to say that a certain character resembles me, it would be wrong
yeah,
because they're constructed. They're constructed character, they're autonomous in their own way, they live their own life. And it's just if at best, I think they're an amalgam of some people that you might have met
yeah.
just on passing like this, but they've stuck in your head, and then you make up a story about that. So autobiographical, no, I don't think so. But there are always bits of you in the story that you write, I
Right.
think.
Antonio, what are the differences between being a playwright and being a novelist?
Well, it's a big one because it's quite a big difference. In a nutshell, I suppose, primarily, a playwright writes for an audience, and therefore the language has to be immediate. He has to make them laugh or cry uh, with his words, and so it's an immediate sort of experience, more immediate, and also it's also not only immediate, but it also is a collaborative art form, because once the playwright has written his story or her story, then it's handed over to the director and then the actors who influence, affect, and change the story in their own way. So the final product is a collaboration with other people. So whereas the novelist is a lonely person, first of all, because he's working. Well, so there are some collaborative efforts, but normally a novel is written by one person. He or she has got total control of the material, and it's a product of one person. So it's a complete work that goes from the author to the reader, if you get any. Um, so in that way it's different. Um, I don't know what else I can say about that, but there are, it's different modes. I'm not saying that one is necessarily superior to the other. They're not.
Okay.
I'm just simply saying that the work is a different, it has a different function.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about you now, Antonio. Where in Italy were you born and raised, and where did you go to school? And do you still have family in Italy?
Um, do I still? Yeah. Well, no, it's such a long time ago. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Excuse me about so I'd been away from Italy a long time, but I had this. I still have. Unfortunately, she's not well now, but this cousin. She's a double cousin because brother and sister married a brother and sister. So she's very dear to me, but and her family. We've been very close, and that's kept the light alive, I suppose, of my going several times to Italy, not just to visit her, but I just like to be in the place where I was born and where I was here for what I can remember. So I do have some people there, but diminishing number of people because they're passing away or getting ill, given the age. I was born in. Did you? Is that adequate answer? Is that what you asked? Sorry, I can't remember.
That's fine. That's beautiful. Um, please tell our audience, where can readers find your books, and do you have a website, Antonio?
Yes. Well, my website can. I'm sorry about that. Excuse me. I need to get some water.
I'm sorry.
Um, I think you asked. Sorry about this, Matthew, but I think you asked where I was born, the town that I was born in. I'd like to tell that story if that's possible. San Fratello is a little mountaintop town, quite up there, sort of unreachable. And it has the interesting thing about San Fratello is that it has its own language. I'm not talking about accents or dialects. It's an entirely different language. Apparently, San Fratello was founded by the retreating French army who were in possession of Sicily. Sicily is in the middle of the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Everybody used to kind of go there and conquer it and then govern it for 20, 50, 100 years, and then somebody else will take back. I mean,
Yeah.
so the French were being ousted, and so they went to this very remote, inaccessible place and founded their town and kept speaking French, basically medieval kind of French. It's almost impossible to believe, but that is true. The people down the coast, who travel, okay, up there now, they don't understand what the people are talking about. So that was San Fratello. And in actually, to tell you the truth, that was a good conditioning for me because my parents didn't come from San Fratello. They got there because they needed work. And so my father could not understand what the local population was saying. And I felt in turn a bit of an outsider. We were considered outsiders. So the migrant experience, I got it in my own country, I think, as a child.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, your question about why did you become a writer? Is that what you asked? Sorry.
No, I was going to ask you, we're kind of running out of time. I've got less than 5 minutes
Oh,
left on the recording.
I didn't realize that.
My
Yeah, sorry.
apologies. I'm sorry about that. Please tell our audience, where can readers find your books, and do you have a website, Antonio?
I do. My website is very rudimentary and possibly impossible to get to, but my books are probably the best place would be Amazon, Amazon books.
Okay. Um, Antonio, last question. What is your next book project, and when can we expect its release?
Right. As I'm getting older, I think I'm getting slower and less ambitious. That happens to everybody, but I've got something I probably shouldn't even talk about it because I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to finish it. That looks at sexuality. I think is the main thrust of that. It's a bit late in my age to think about that, but I'm not. I just thought that I'd start writing something like that. It seems to be working. It doesn't always work, but yeah, that's it. I can't even tell you the title because I don't know it
That's okay. Hey, you're never too old, to find love. I think,
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll finish it and then I'll send you a copy when I do.
okay.
I'd love to do that.
One last quick question. When you were growing up, who were your favorite authors?
Look, I loved reading, really loved. I was this passion for reading. So I used to go through stages. At university, I was totally immersed in Shakespeare, in the Victorian writers like the Brontes and Eliot. Americans, William Faulkner, I adored. I loved William Faulkner and Henry James. Very. Also, I love the South Americans, Marquez, Gabriel Marquez. And of course, then you got the Russians and the French. Look, I couldn't even, there is one book that I kind of remember that's I always try to remember, and it's by, I'm trying to remember. It's a Russian, Bulgakov,
Wow.
the Master and Margarita. A book that's probably not that well known, but I loved it.
Antonio, I want to thank you so much for appearing on my show. And I'd love to have you, whenever you come out with a new work, I'd love to have you on again. Okay.
Okay, that'll be great. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
And please enjoy your summer down there. I know I was watching the Australian Open. They were saying there was over 100 degrees in Melbourne there. So you must be having a horrible heat wave.
Well, surprisingly enough, usually that's the case. And Melbourne is one that's cool in terms of weather, and we're very hot here, but it's been not too bad.
Okay. Antonio, thank you so much. And may God bless and keep you always.
Thank you very much, and all the best in your career as well.
Thank you. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao. Ciao.
Oh.